Recorded Books and One Click Digital present Robert E. Lee, a biography by Emory M. Thomas, narrated by Richard Davidson.
Forward. Robert Edward Lee was to the manor born. He was even in the manor, Stratford Hall, born. But at age 2 he left the manor and returned only as a guest. Indeed, Lee spent much of his life as a house guest and never owned a home in which he lived. Lee suffered all of his life from a birth defect. He was the son of Light Horse Harry Lee. Lee never knew his father, who was seldom at home, left his family when Robert was 6, and died when Robert was 11. Yet Light Horse Harry conditioned his son's life. Lee's father was a source of shame for the family, and Lee's pious mother did her best to ensure that young Robert did not emulate his father's infamy. Robert Lee became a righteous young man. He assumed male responsibilities for the household while still an adolescent. He endured the discipline and rigor of West Point without incurring a single demerit. He embarked upon a career as an engineer officer and pursued public works within a military establishment that most often rewarded diligence ahead of brilliance. Lee married Mary Custis, a woman ostensibly as pious as his mother, who possessed the status, wealth, and stability Lee's mother never enjoyed. But Mary Custis proved a liability. She was spoiled and helpless when she married Lee, and she became more so when confronted with the obligations of being spouse, adult, and parent. Never robust, Mary in time developed arthritis, which rendered her an invalid in form as well as fact. Further frustrations plagued Lee. He was often anxious about his 7 children, none of whom seemed able to escape his shadow and lead fulfilling lives. When his father-in-law died in 1857, Lee only inherited more problems than he could solve. When he transferred out of the Engineer Corps to command cavalry in Texas, Lee discovered duty even more monotonous than constructing islands for the engineers. He was a brave soldier who never recoiled from combat, but he usually withdrew from personal conflict. Lee's characteristic response to conflict was to walk away from it and hope that it would go away. From Texas, where he had returned to duty, Lee wrote his daughter Agnes, "It is better, too, I hope, for all that I am here. You know I was very much in the way of everybody, and my tastes and pursuits did not coincide with the rest of the household. Now I hope everybody is happier." In other circumstances, Lee's reluctance to confront superiors and subordinates had consequences that affected victory and defeat on his battlefields. Certainly Lee achieved successes, even attained triumphs during his life. But his triumphs always seemed tainted. He knew he could move the Mississippi River back to St. Louis and blast navigable channels through the Des Moines and Rock Island Rapids. But the powers that were withdrew necessary funds before he completed his tasks. Lee performed brilliantly in the Mexican War. On several occasions he made the difference between victory and defeat. However, he held no command in Mexico. He served as a member of Winfield Scott's staff, and in the aftermath of victory saw his mentor recalled in disgrace, the victim of domestic political intrigue. Lee achieved victories in command of the Army of Northern Virginia, fighting for the continued existence of the Confederate States of America. But Lee's career as a Confederate included more than a year without any bona fide command, a year in which he presided over defeat in Western, now West Virginia, and retreat from the coast in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and tried to advise a stubborn president amid reverses that appeared unremitting. And Lee's Confederate experience also included those long months in the trenches around Petersburg, in a grinding war of attrition that Lee knew he would likely lose. Lee's claim to fame as a Confederate
Sample complete. Ready to continue?